Welcome to another special edition of Litter Media Live. I'm Dan Ramey, and in studio with us today is one of our local farmers, Brice Acton. We'll talk with Brice in just a moment, but first, this from Tomlinson Insurance Agency.
At Tomlinson Insurance, we've been protecting families, farms, and businesses since 1853. From auto, home, farm, life, or health, we tailor coverage that fits your world with multiple carriers to meet your insurance needs. Real people, real service, local agents who can answer the phone and care when it matters most. Tomlinson Insurance. Let our history be your future. Call or stop by today.
Listeners on Litter Media Radio couldn't see this, but tomatoes and corn were in that commercial with Andy Tomlinson there. And Brice, you know all too well about trying to grow such vegetation.
Well, yeah, a little bit. Those stay more in the garden. We'd stay more with the row crops, corn, soybeans, wheat. Play a little bit in the garden, have fun with the family. But
this conversation comes about because you're going to be making a trip out to California to do a national speak, which is going to be pretty awesome. I'm sure you'll be shaking in your boots a little bit.
I already am. I hope I don't make it to California. I hope I stop in San Antonio.
Oh, San Antonio. I thought, for whatever reason, I thought you said San Diego. So.
Oh, no, San Antonio.
Well, San Antonio is a nice place, too.
Yeah, I hope to make it to the river walk. Let's not go all the way to, if the planes take me there, we might have a problem.
Yeah, right. You find a way back. We have, this conversation came about because our Mike Smith went on Facebook and explained some of the mental issues that he went through when he was injured. He had a thigh injury. This is probably 2016, I believe it was. And he was laid up for a good while, and his voices in his head and everything started talking to him, and his mental health started to go in decline. That's gotten him into a point where he sought help, got the help he needed, and now he's helping others. You saw that, didn't you?
I saw his video, and I reached out to Mike. Mike's been a family friend my whole life, him and his wife, and ran into him and just wanted to tell him how much I appreciated him doing that video. Farmer mental health is something that weighs a lot on me, which is the whole reason I'm going to Texas. I'll be speaking there on behalf of Ross Soil and Water Conservation District and the Ohio Federation of Soil and Water Conservation Districts at the National Association of Conservation Districts annual meeting. Lots of conservation districts there. But the whole premise is I started this 2004 in September. It was on September 11th. There was a major cornfield fire out in Frankfort. And I was part of being able to fight that field fire and giving back to the community. And it wasn't our cornfield fire, but we were able to bring some tillage equipment to help with that. And afterwards, I got to realizing how much of a struggle the drought of 2024 was, not only messing with my head, but with the heads of other farmers. And I had the ability to then go and meet with or do an interview. At the time, Ty Higgins was with the Ohio Farm Bureau Federation, so I did his podcast. Mm-hmm. And that was primarily about farmer mental health. I'm one that goes down rabbit holes. So then I went down this farmer mental health rabbit hole at the time is what it was. I hadn't really thought much about it and realized while I was doing this, the state of Ohio at the exact same time was doing a farmer mental health study. And they were able to highlight that farmers were the most likely profession in the state of Ohio to commit suicide. I forget the statistics now. They did a whole report on it, released that at the end of 2024. But then looking in my own community, I realized that, and when I say my own community, I'm Ross County and larger, this kind of geographical area. I realized how much I've noticed a decline in the fellowship among farmers. Even you get a bunch of farmers together, the room isn't as jovial as it used to be. And so it got me kind of on this path to wanting to talk about farmer mental health, some of my own struggles with it. We do spend a lot of time in isolation. I've coined the phrase alone and unsupervised with my thoughts. Mm-hmm. And at times that's a very dangerous place to be.
It is.
And so, you spend 14, 16 hours a day in a tractor, in a combine, in a semi, with no one else to talk to, you start to go down rabbit holes and start to feel those effects. And so I just started talking about it and writing about it. I prefer to write. It's a lot easier to get my thoughts. I can rewrite things 100 times over. I can't take all the ums out of this conversation, but that's kind of where I've spun to. I actually got confirmation on my way here this morning that in March I'll be heading to the inaugural Northeast Ohio Ag Expo, and we'll be speaking there on the Friday of their Ag Expo on farmer mental health at 6:00 up there in Henry County.
Very nice.
So I'm excited about that. But getting to share my story and kind of just show farmers that they're not alone. There are other farmers that are having issues, that are struggling, and are fighting with themselves.
I've often wondered what goes through the mind of a farmer when he or she have put so much time into preparing the field, or maybe the field's been too wet in the spring to plant yet, and you're getting a late start, and you're concerned about what the yields are going to be and everything. That's got to be just a roller coaster ride of emotions.
Oh, it's terrible. I mean, to sit there and do I plant, don't I plant? Should I plant today? Should I plant tomorrow? But they're calling for rain. The thought process that they're, if you ask my wife, it's probably miserable to live with a farmer during planting season or during harvest season. If you get in there, planting season, I run with the phrase, we've never not got a crop planted. This year was a perfect example of that. We did get our crop planted. It was not planted timely, and it didn't do fantastic as a whole. We had some places that beat expectations and some other places that expectations weren't even close to being reached. Yeah. But the real struggle comes sitting in a combine. Excuse me. You're sitting there in that combine watching a yield monitor, and then you turn on the radio and you hear somebody with ABN or something like that come on and give you your markets. Mm-hmm. And here's your yield presented right in front of you on a screen. You can quickly do the math from what the number the guy just said on the radio. You already know the cost you have in it per acre. Now you're going, ooh, am I making money or not? At the end of the day, farming is a business. The whole goal is to make money. Yeah. And, that's, I think, where a lot of this hits, because that's right before winter. Mm-hmm. And that's where my initial struggles was in winter. Just lacking the motivation to do anything. And I got to noticing that and realizing that I couldn't focus on wanting to do a project, start a project, do anything. And got to talking to my wife, and she was my biggest help. And she said, maybe I should talk to our doctor. And I did, and was able to work through some things and figure out ways that now I know how to do things. There is medical support. There's mental support. I elected that the medical side of it, the medications weren't for me. They are for a lot of people. I tried them. They didn't work for me. But I've learned management tactics to deal with what's going on inside my head, and the struggles I have there. I've told a lot of people it's, my doctor told me I have generalized anxiety disorder and ADHD, which are two fantastic things to couple together.
It's a nice train wreck, isn't it?
It is, because, you know what you need to do. Mm-hmm. You start on a task, mm-hmm. and then something shiny takes over, and you do something else for a while. Then another shiny thing happens. Mm-hmm. By the time it's done, you've got 4 projects going. You go in the house at night, realize that you finish none of them, and the anxiety sets in, and it just begins to pile.
You're describing every day of vacation I've ever taken.
Well,
my wife has all these things planned for me to take care of, and then it's just a downhill slope.
Oh, so you need to be on the sand and surf vacation plan.
Yeah.
If there's not sand and water, I don't want any part of it. That's the only plan, and it better be on Hilton Head Island. That's the only option for a vacation in my mind, and it better last a week or better. Uh-huh. Get me away from this. But. And you mentioned that, but it's kind of funny when we go on vacation, we take our entire family. And we have one rule. because my dad and I, along with my mom and my wife and my 4 kids, we farm together. I had proud dad moments this year watching a 10-year-old run a John Deere 8310R, which is a very large tractor, pulling an 1,100 bushel grain cart, filling semi trucks by himself at 10 years old.
I think I saw this on Facebook.
Yeah.
That's your boy.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And then my 12-year-old ran our entire grain bin setup for us one day, and we're not fancy. We don't have the grain leg. We have open augers. We dump into a semi dumps into the auger, takes it up in the bin, and we were short on help. So I grabbed my 12-year-old and I said, listen, here's the ground rules. That thing spins real fast and will turn you into ground beef. Don't stick your fingers in there. Press this button, turn this on. And for an entire day, he did it and was phenomenal. He would run the grain cart, he'd bring it over, dump it in the semi, and I ran the combine. And it was just me and him all day long. And so that was a lot of fun to me. So, it is a whole family adventure. My daughter, she spends a lot of time taking care of the livestock when we're not, or when we're at harvest or when we're planting. She kind of helps me with the livestock there on the farm. I have a 7-year-old that he helps, but not a lot.
Hasn't learned how to yet.
Yes. He wants to be a huge part of it. But, so we're taking all of us on vacation. And the number one rule on vacation is we don't farm on Hilton Head Island. We have no land there, no livestock there, so there is no farming to be discussed while we're on the island.
Our responsibility is to have fun.
Yes. And it's, helps Dad and I unwind, but it also teaches the kids they need to have that break, that disconnect from work to family.
Yeah.
And, the family farm aspect of this is huge to us. Family comes first. We do, we take breaks for, to go to volleyball games, to go to things like that. I can always farm, but I can never watch another volleyball, that volleyball game over. Once it's done, it's done.
Right.
That acre of corn might last till tomorrow. So we do put a lot of emphasis on the family part of it, do a lot with family. And that's another thing that helps with my mental health is being able to step away from the farm, even if it is temporary, and focus on family.
It sounds to me like you have also learned along the way through your struggles of how to be able to help others. So when you farmers do get together and have fellowship, that you're not commiserating. So some of that can be kind of diffused a little bit, because I could see you easily saying, yeah, we're just not doing well. Well, we're not doing well either. And next thing you know, who knows where that leads. But as long as somebody's there to help pick up the pieces, then it gives you a little more juice to get back out there.
It does. Now, I will say, things like this are how I try to reach farmers. We go to farmer meetings, and I noticed right after I started this at the end of 24, you almost become a leper in your own community. I don't know if people are afraid that I'm going to make them spill what's bothering them inside. That's their burden to bear. It's none of my business unless they choose to share that with me. I'm not going to ask. The deepest question I will ever ask anyone is, how are you doing?
Yeah.
Now it's up to you to say good and walk away, or to get something off your chest. I will give you the opening. It's yours to take it. If you choose not to, I'm not going to press about it. There's no need to press about it. So I'll share my story. I'll share, I want farmers to realize, or other agriculturalists to realize, that they're not doing this alone. While all of our struggles are different, we can find some similarity. A beef producer and a sheep producer are two totally different types of livestock, but we both have the markets to struggle with. Yeah. So, there's ways of, and even, the commiserating is actually a great way to deal with it. Getting it off your chest, getting it out there. Don't hold it up. Don't bottle it inside. Get it out in the open, because you may realize, oh, wow, he's dealing with the same thing I am. And, then you can laugh about it. And laughter still is the best medicine. Making fun of it still is the best medicine. Yeah. I can joke about what goes on inside my head. I told a guy last night that I like to look at my head as still running on floppy disks because it's only a certain amount of information can be processed at one time, and you can't do something else unless you change disks.
Right.
And, when I'm getting down and thinking about something, that's what I'm thinking about. And I have to take a step back, reprocess where my brain is to be able to focus on a different task. And I can joke about that. Mm-hmm. It's just how my brain functions. But when I'm on something and I'm looking at something, man, I'll go down a wormhole, rabbit hole on that. And I'm very efficient about it. But don't ask me to do something else while I'm doing it.
Because I'm on a task.
Yes. I'm on a mission at that point in time. And, so I can laugh and joke about it. And that's what I want other guys to realize, or other ladies, anybody in this profession or any profession for that matter. If there's something you struggle with, find humor in it. Humor can exist anywhere. Yeah. And, that's for me been probably one of the easiest ways to deal with it is realizing it is funny. The way my brain processes things is, I find it hilarious, but I've learned to deal with it. I've learned to cope with it. Now I write lists. I'm 38 years old and have to carry a notepad with me to write things down so that I can keep myself on task. But by doing that, I stay focused and can do everything I need to do.
You get things done that way.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so learning this whole mental health thing and how everyone processes things differently has been a learning curve. Growing up, you hear about it and, you think everybody's just, when they talk about mental health, we need to commit them to an institution. That's the first thought that pops into your head. And, the more I've dealt with it, the more I've realized there's more people you meet in your daily life that are going through something that is affecting them. And it doesn't have to be a lifelong diagnosis with some letters or an acronym, but all of us can have temporary setbacks in our mental attitude.
Because everybody's going through something.
Everybody's going through something. This morning, if you wouldn't have texted me, I spent 20 minutes rushing here because I completely left it off my calendar. So
these things happen.
Yeah.
And it's all worked out. I mean, it's not to a point where, okay, forget it. We're never having you on ever again. We're not like that at all here. This is something that we hope that will help others that might be going through something similar and just don't know how to talk about it. Sometimes just sitting down and a person having a conversation with another and someone eavesdropping in through a podcast, it's like, hey, wait a second. I'm having those issues too. And it opens up that interest where next thing you know, you're not alone.
Oh, exactly. As you're saying that, it makes me think about what we talked about before we got started this morning. The stresses we deal with in agriculture. And I don't care what facet of agriculture you're in, because agriculture is annoyingly broad. From floriculture to aquaculture to row crop agriculture to livestock agriculture. It encompasses so many things. But our inputs and our struggle to get inputs and our struggles to get financing, most farmers, and I don't think most people realize, most farmers aren't doing this out of their own pockets. Right. We go and beg and plead for money from a bank every single year.
Which adds to the stress level.
And, a lot of times your farming operation relies on the yes or no from a lender. And that's a struggle for a lot of farmers. I think the number I just saw coming out of the South, and pardon me, this may be wrong, but I think the number was 50% of farmers we're looking at West Tennessee, Arkansas, that area. 50%, half the farmers, 1 out of every 2, will not be financially sound in 2026. Their businesses will be hemorrhaging money.
And the world depends upon their success.
100%. And the worst part is any other industry out there, some of these guys are looking at 4 years of this. 4 years of hemorrhaging money in any other industry. They're going to lock the doors and walk away.
You're belly up, yeah.
But for some godforsaken reason, it's ingrained in a farmer just to keep going, whether you're in the red or black or not. You just keep pushing forward. I still don't understand that. I think it stems a lot. There's theories. I sat through a podcast there a while back, put on by the National Association of Conservation Districts. It's the land logic thought process that is, we can't afford to lose the land. The land is their identity. As for my wife and I, we're the 5th generation of my family to own the property. No, we're 4th. My kids make the 5th generation to live on our farm, to own and work that ground. So 5 generations of my family have worked our 76 acres there on Westfall. But I actually think it's more, at least in our area, the farmers you talk to, if you ask who somebody is, they're a farmer. There's no distinguishment. In a lot of farmers' eyes, the only thing that makes them what they are is that they're a farmer. And, I like to say that that's what I do. That's not who I am. I'm a father. I'm a mental health advocate. There's a lot of things that make me who I am. I'm not just a farmer. And so when you look at what's going on down south, you realize that mentality is full in play as they're still making sure that cotton and rice and soybeans and corn are being produced in those areas, whether they're in the red or black or not. Yeah. And so my heart goes out to those guys and women down there that are struggling financially to keep their family businesses afloat. And I know how hard they're having it. They're now saying that same struggle is happening up in the Dakotas. And it all stems financially. At the end of the day, it is still a business.
And I never really thought about this, but I'm guessing that's part of why you see more farmland being turned into a solar farm or into like a data center, like what they're talking about up in Pickaway County, warehouse territory. It's almost as if I'd like to keep farming, but I can't financially do it.
That's some of it. I'm not going to say that's the biggest part of it. I know when you get up around the big data center, up just, east of Columbus there, when they started paying that $50,000 an acre, some of that land was owned by guys my age. And I'm pretty certain I heard, there's a piece of ground up there that's sold. Well, if you go back to farming as a business, if you're 37 years old and you can sell your farm and have enough money to retire at 37, isn't that the goal of any business person, is to retire?
Right.
I'm against solar panels as much as the next person. I truly am, for the simple fact that once the solar panel's there, you can't farm that ground again. Mm-hmm. There's enough rooftops in this country to stick solar panels on, but that's for a different discussion. Right. You look at more so the solar panels are a mental health burden on farmers. I had the privilege of going into western Highland County. Take a Sunday drive down there. Mm-hmm. I think the guy told us 10,000 acres of solar panels in western Highland County. Wow. And it's ground that farmers have rented 2 and 3 generations of the same farming family have rented this ground. And now the landlord, his kids have it. They don't want to be landlords. So let's put it in solar panels. Mm-hmm. So in the back of your mind as a farmer, it's, well, if I rent land, how long before my landlords put it in solar?
Right. And where will I farm then?
Yeah. So, the solar plays into the mental health, but more so in terms of, if you're on the receiving end of the money, I'm sure there's a huge wrestle there with your own mental health. I've never went down that road. But from the farming perspective of rented ground, that's a huge thing that plays on mental health. But financially, it is so hard. The big thing, I'm sure it's going to be all over TV today. The announcement was made yesterday, $11 billion subsidy package to farmers. They're calling it a bridge payment. $11 billion is huge. It's a lot of money. Divide that out across the whole country. It doesn't factor out to large amounts of money to each individual farmer. But what's hilarious about that payment, and this is where, again, spinning it to mental health, the grain markets, as soon as that announcement was made yesterday, went the wrong direction. They went lower. Mm. And I'm sure if we could look at our input prices today, seed, chemical, fertilizer, they all went up. Because the government just gave farmers money. So now they can spend it to buy chemicals, fertilizer, things like that. So let's raise our prices because they're in business to make money.
Right.
So the money that's supposed to be given to make a farmer financially stable is actually going to someone else.
The old shell game.
Yes. And there's a great public person on Facebook from up in Wisconsin. And he did a whole thing on it last night. I think he was live for over an hour.
Oh, my.
Ranting and raving about this economic assistance package. And, that was the biggest point. And that's what's always happened to farmers anytime we get this check from the government is all of our inputs rise. Mm-hmm. And that just makes it so much harder to be profitable. We don't control the price we buy things for, and we don't control the price we sell things for. We are told both of those prices, and then we have to try to make a living.
You have to meet the goals.
Yes.
And as we spoke before we went on the air here, you put a seed in the ground, and then it's up to God.
Yeah. We have we can keep the weeds at bay. We can keep disease at bay. But to make that thing grow, we need sunlight. We need heat, but not too much. We need moisture, but not too much. Mm-hmm. And, it's a perfect balance of everything. You get into the agronomics behind it. They've proven, they call it growing degree units for corn. But when you factor that, you're factoring the amount of heat produced in a day. Mm. And it's a very tight window. It's 50 to 80 degrees Fahrenheit. Corn shuts down and stops growing below 50 degrees and shuts down and stops growing above 80 degrees. So it's a 30-degree window that corn plant can grow in. So you need this perfect balance of heat. If we've learned anything in the last 2 years, we need a perfect balance of rain. Right. We had way not enough and then way too much this spring. Mm-hmm. So all of this coupled together is just mentally taxing because a lot of it is out of our control. I can't control the market. I can't control the weather. I can't control the price of what I pay for stuff. And then you start to question, why am I even doing this?
I was thinking to myself, you then ask why I would want to be a farmer. And it comes down to the heart because it's necessary and you are providing a service that only you can provide.
Yes, and I can give you all the books on how to be a farmer. But if you don't have the drive, desire, and passion to do it, you probably won't succeed. Yeah. Because you can do it to the numbers all day long, but you have to have a love for it. Mm-hmm. When you go out on a morning like this and you spend your morning busting ice out of a livestock waterer, you have to have the desire to do that. Bedding livestock in the frigid cold, walking through the snow to get there, carrying a bale of straw, that's annoying. Mm-hmm.
Delivering a calf at odd hours of the day.
Pulling lambs that are dead.
Yeah.
And there is nothing cuter than a newborn lamb. But knowing that they're not going to make it due to one reason or the other, and I've done that multiple times, pulled a lamb that, you get out there and you can see that lamb, it needs pulled and it's dead. The weight on your heart is tremendous. And, because our goal was to take care of these animals and provide a life for them. And you missed it on that mark. Yeah. And so, mentally that is so taxing to have that animal. In a lamb, you've waited 5 months, and a hog, you waited 3 months, 3 weeks, and 3 days, and a cow, you wait 9 months. for this chance and you missed it. And then, you get that animal, and it is, from that point moving forward, you're working so hard, so intently on making sure that animal is happy, comfortable. So, it's a constant game of trying to provide for these animals given any weather condition. You look at the rain this spring. At the time we had a pretty decent sheep herd. Sheep don't do mud, and they develop hoof issues. Mm-hmm. So we have all this rain, we have all this mud, and now I've got sheep locked in a feedlot to keep them out of the mud so they can stay on concrete so we don't end up with all these hoof issues. Mm-hmm. I'm sure the sheep were going stir crazy. And, so I'm trimming hooves, I'm checking sheep constantly while trying to plant a crop. I mean, it's just a never-ending torrent of what's next.
Right.
And, I read things from farming generations ahead of us where it seemed simpler. Mm-hmm. Things weren't as difficult. And, I laugh every time I've been to a meeting as a farmer. We're told as American agriculturalists to produce more. That's this overarching goal that my entire life has been ingrained in the American farmer. The funny part is when you get down to where we're hearing that information from, it's not from the people buying our products. It's from the people selling us the stuff to make it grow more. Uh-huh. And, where we sit here this morning is so close to one of the largest grain terminals in Southern Ohio, right here on Watt Street. Mm-hmm. And never once have the representatives from them ever said, I need you to grow more for me. And so we're being inundated with this grow more mentality without anyone sitting down and looking at, holy cow, look at the national surplus of grains. And I was explaining it to somebody the other day. I can't remember who it was I was talking to. And I said, how weird would it be if that big truck plant on the other side of town just went, I'm going to make as many semis as I possibly can. Mm-hmm. Without regard to the market and what the market could bear. It's just, I'm going to produce as much as humanly possible. But that's what the American farmer is being told to do. So then you have that burden on your mind as well. I'm told to produce more, but every amount more I produce, I'm actually taking out of my own pocket.
Right.
So.
And digging a hole.
That's
doing nothing.
Yeah.
Nothing productive.
And so all of these things weigh on the American farmer. And so it is a struggle, because if you don't produce more, that's the mark of a good farmer, who can yield the most. Mm-hmm. And there is a seed company in this country that has actually spun that around and is solely looking at ROI. Mm-hmm. And a farmer should be judged by how thick his billfold is, not by how many bushels he can pull off an acre.
Yeah.
But if you want to rent more ground, you need to be able to tout that I can grow X amount of bushels of corn or X amount of bushels of beans, because that's how a landlord's going to perceive your productivity. But if you can get 150 bushel corn to yield you the same dollar figures in net dollars at the end of the day as a 220 bushel field of corn, well, that's less wear and tear on your equipment, less wear and tear across the board. You need less storage. Storage costs money. Mm-hmm. And you're going to have the same amount of money in your billfold. So to me, that guy just spent less money. As a mark, his operation was far more efficient. Mm-hmm. But that's not what's determined as the better farmer.
Yeah, because where's the reward there, right?
Right. They used to give plaques and signs for farmers that, and they still might make, we still have national yield contests. Mm-hmm. Let's have national ROI contests.
Right. When the return on the investment share starts to pan out, then you have success.
Yes. Yeah. Every other business out there, that's the main driver, is ROI. Not let's get the most yield and then try to work backwards to a profitable ROI. Let's start at the beginning trying to search for the highest ROI. And that might be 250 bushel corn. It might be 150 bushel corn, depending on where you live and what your setup is financially as a farmer. Mm-hmm. And that's one thing that I think outside the box in. Most farmers, if any farmers, hear this, they're going to think I am absolutely crazy for that thought process. But at the end of the day, it's my job to provide for my family. Mm-hmm. And that's where I have to get to. And if I can do that by growing less, that's a win-win for me.
Right.
But to what we're talking about in the mental health of all of this, those are all the factors. And they come at a farmer from all different directions. And so to try to be ready for them and to plan for that is the biggest struggle.
There's no one quick answer because there are so many factors coming into play.
And there's not a fix for it.
Yeah.
And I don't believe there ever will be. I've made this statement several times. If I can just help one farmer. Mm-hmm. But I don't want to ever know if I helped you. Because if I run with that mentality that if I can help one farmer, but I can never measure it, then I have to continue with this forever.
Right.
And
no rest in sight.
Right. Because I want to never feel satisfied in what I'm doing. Mm-hmm. So I don't want to ever know that I did it. But here locally, there have been friends or friends of friends that have taken their own lives as agriculturalists. And that's my biggest goal, is to prevent that. Yeah. This is never that hard, that's the only option. Yes, at times it may seem like that is the easiest path forward. I've never been down that road. Hope to never start down that road. But for someone who is traveling that road, let me help you. Mm-hmm. If I never have to step foot in a funeral home ever again, especially for one of my friends in the agricultural community, that will be a blessing. Unless it was because they were old. Right.
Yeah. There are things that are out of our control, but let's control the things that we can control.
Yes.
That's our minds and our mental health. You'll be speaking in San Antonio. On what dates?
It'll be the February 18th was the date that I speak in San Antonio. And I believe it's March 6th in Northwest Ohio, up in Henry County.
So the first quarter of 26 is pretty big for you.
It is. So. I'm really excited to be able to go speak. And honestly, it kind of came from a real good friend of mine, Sam Steiner, who is the president of the Ohio Federation of Soil and Water Conservation Districts. She reached out to me. Mm-hmm. She also sits on the national board or is active maybe in the national level. I don't know if she's on the national board. Maybe I misspoke there. But she's very active in the national level. And I spoke last year, like I said at the beginning of this, I love to write. Mm-hmm. And my other weird, ridiculous hobby is I like to read state law.
Something everybody wants to do.
Yes, exactly. I enjoy it. I love to say I enjoy living in the gray area. And the only way you know if you're in the gray area is if you know where the black and the white is.
Right. So
I have to know exactly where the black and white is so I can live in the gray. Mm-hmm. So I enjoy reading state law. And through my reading of Chapter 940 of the Ohio Revised Code, which deals solely with soil and water conservation districts. I've served here locally on Ross's Soil and Water Board for 8 years. Mm-hmm. Coming up on my 9th year, my final year with soil and water. I have familiarized myself enough with that law to realize that every soil and water conservation district in the state of Ohio is charged with protecting the natural resources within their care.
Right.
Well, I was able to use the law, I guess, against itself and say that using a dictionary and a thesaurus, that natural could also be rephrased as logical. It's the natural choice or the logical choice. Mm-hmm. And resource in the noun form Could be a tree, a flower, that kind of resource. But it could also be a tool. What resources do we need to do this show? Mm-hmm. So it's the logical tool is the natural resource.
Right.
Well, a farmer is the logical tool for conservation. Farmers care for far more acres of land in the state of Ohio than any one group of people. So under state law, in my own interpretation of it, farmers deserve conservation because they are the logical tool for conservation or the natural resource for conservation. And I gave this speech in front of Brian Baldridge, the director of agriculture for the state of Ohio last year. And hearing that, that's what they prompted me to want to go to Texas for and speak. Because I think that farmers and their mental health should be protected. And so that's kind of what prompted that portion of it.
Sounds to me like God has placed you right where you need to be and giving you the talents and tools to be able to break these things down to make it simplistic for even the most high-educated person to understand.
Well, I'd hope so.
I say it that way because there are so many government-type people that are highly educated, but they have zero common sense. And so I think having someone as yourself and how you've broken this down and learned it, anybody can catch on to what you're saying.
And that's kind of my goal is that, it goes back to when I sit in line at the grain elevator, there's a truck. I have no clue who it is, but on the back of their grain trailer, they have a bumper sticker that says, "No farmers, no food." Mm-hmm. And it's just that simplistic.
Let's help the farmer make the food.
Yes. And, without farmers, food becomes a struggle. Mm-hmm. I have met people in my life that believe that there's some food, they think their food comes from Kroger. Right. Which their food directly probably does come from Kroger, but, in a broader sense, Kroger has to get it from somewhere.
They have suppliers, that's for sure.
And, at the end of the day, the biggest supplier of food in this country is the American farmer. Mm-hmm. And there are a lot of struggles in American agriculture right now. Our beef herd's at an all-time low, which is why the price of steaks at the grocery store is through the roof. Right. That's a simplistic supply and demand look. There's not enough cows and the demand didn't change. Mm-hmm. Those farmers are sitting high on the hog right now. There's been a beef boom this year and it's going great. The biggest downfall to a beef boom is you got those couple cows, you're old, you're looking at retiring. Maybe I should just sell everything and pocket that money. Well, now you just lessened the national cattle herd even more. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of that going on. Older ranchers are going, I'm old. Maybe I should retire. Right now I can make a lot of money if I just go ahead and retire. So, the mental health of the farmer plays so crucially in our food security. Making sure that we have the food we need to feed the American population. And everyone, it seems, is out to tell the American farmer how they need to do their job. Whereas I would rather be the voice that let me help you do your job and keep your head on your shoulders. Mm-hmm. I don't care how you do it. That's you run your business the way you see fit. But let me help you stay mentally grounded while you're doing it. Realize that your struggles are yours individually, but someone else might be going through something very similar. And this too shall pass.
And if you have the mental aspect taken care of, you're a better version of yourself to be able to be that farmer.
Yes, very much so.
Yeah. I appreciate your information and insight on this, and love to have you back on sometime. Maybe before or after you do your speaking tour and have you stop in and give one more local shot to us.
Anytime. I'd be glad to come in. If you ever need anything with agriculture, let me know.
Sounds good. Brice Acton Maybe you know him. Maybe you just learned about him. He's been our contributor here today on Litter Media and Litter Media Radio. And thank you also to Andy Tomlinson with Tomlinson Insurance Agency sponsoring this edition of Litter Media Live.